Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The Sparkfile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Spark File, your single take musical montage of creative inspiration.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. You may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File? Where do I get one? What do I file in it? These are such good questions, and we do have answers.
We do. A Spark File is the place where you consistently collect all your inspirations and fascinations. And if you're anything like us and you're making stuff all the time, you know that sometimes the wellspring of inspiration can run a little dry. That's why we are here to refill it.
Yes. We're on the lookout for fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark our creativity and pique our curiosity, things that inspire us to get up off of our asses and make things like this podcast.
Or a character who runs the gauntlet from kind girl to mean girl to whole person.
Or curriculum that brings out the very best in young performers.
Or an outreach organization that fosters creative expression, builds self-esteem, and strengthens the community through the performing arts.
Or a book drive that collects over 1,000 donated books.
Oh, on today's Makersode, we're going to talk with someone who truly sparks us.
And that special someone is Erika Henningsen. Erika, welcome to the Spark File.
Oh, what a lead-in.
Oh, I forgot the sound effect. There you go.
Got it.
Yeah, we have a ways to go on that sound effect, but we are working on it.
We are working
fearlessly.
Yes.
You may know from listening to the podcast a bit that there's a small price of admission to pay.
I do know
right
this.
at the top.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
So, before we can let you into the Spark File, we need to hear some creative risk that you have taken recently. You got anything for us?
You do. I can see it in your face.
I do, actually. I tried to sketch somebody on the subway when I knew people could be looking over my shoulder.
Wow.
But I have not drawn anything since I was maybe 9. So in my planner, I don't have my planner. But I just there was a little lady. It looked nothing like her. I probably looked like I took my inner thoughts where people think you're like a weird artist person who takes yourself really seriously and has to sketch everywhere. But I just wanted to see if
my first sketch.
Exactly. If any of those juices were still flowing. It was actually very fun and calming, and I put it away and just thought, all right, cool.
I love that.
That's
Instead
so
of
cool.
pulling your fucking phone out on the subway,
Exactly.
you were like, I'm going to try to sketch this lady.
And it happened.
And you did it.
You did it.
Excellent. I think you're officially admitted to the Spark File.
Amazing.
So, Erika, for people who do not know you, How do you identify creatively?
I am an actor. That is what I would say first and foremost. How I identify creatively, I guess for me, the thing that is fun is getting to show the parts of myself that the general public maybe isn't aware of, or even the parts that I'm not quite aware of until I'm forced to show them to people.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, what are those parts?
I think for me, playing anything that's I tend to lead very upbeat. I like to use art to make people happy just because I think there's so much sadness and difficulty in the world. So that's always how I tend to lead. But when I'm asked to do something that taps into sort of, the dark fears and anxieties that we all have, that's when I just think, okay, this is your uncomfortable zone. Lean into it because it's somebody else's uncomfortable zone and maybe they'll meet you there out in the audience, on stage. But I do think there's balance for I think for a long time I thought, I have to suffer to be an artist. And I think there's room for both, to have art bring joy to you, bring joy to others. And then when you need it or when it's asked of you or when you want to go to those places,
to other dimensions.
Available.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. I love that.
That's right.
What would you say you're most well known for?
I think now it's for Mean Girls the musical. But I
don't say.
guess
Did you say Mean Girls the musical?
Mean Girls the musical.
Now, is that on Broadway?
It is on Broadway. Actually, it's so, I just think this is uncanny timing unless you timed this on purpose. I've been with the show for almost 3 years now, and I leave 3 weeks from now.
Yes.
Wow.
Did you see this on purpose?
Feeling?
Well, it just sort of timed out organically, but we were talking in preparation for this conversation. We were talking about how this is kind of a special time for you because it is a transition time.
Yes.
Where you have been living with this work for a significant amount of time. And I'm sure there are many feelings that you have around this time of transition.
Yes. So many.
Do you want to name some of those feelings?
Let me just give you just a story that encapsulates it. I had to go to my voice doctor recently just for a little checkup. And he touched my shoulders and basically just said, like, I can see you carrying this character with you. You have to start letting her go. And I just started crying, not because, I think just because you don't realize how enmeshed you are with the character you've been playing for a long time until that idea hits you of, this second skin that I just put on so easily and feels so comfortable, but still feels fun because it's not really me, is not actually a sustainable building block of my life, in the sense that I'm going to play her every day for the rest of my existence.
Pete Holmes and John Mulaney in that conversation that we referred to one time in the podcast say, it's all a rental.
It's all a rental.
It's all a rental.
Yes. And I have to give the rental back.
Yeah.
And I was so happy when you asked me to do this because I just thought, I remember thinking, oh God, I don't know if I'm the person to talk about creativity, because in the last, 6 months or so, as I've neared year 3, I just thought my creativity has been fully excavated when it comes to the show. I think I still find new things,
Sure.
but I'm in that transition phase of the fear of, okay, here we go. You're about to have to go out into the world and redefine yourself now. Not just as a performer, but as Erika Henningsen, as a human being, because for so long it's been Erika Henningsen from Mean Girls. Which is so weird.
You're about to enter some liminal space.
Yes.
Where you're like,
Just a little liminal space.
Just a little. But I will say, I've loved playing a 16-year-old because it's kind of, you revisit your high school trauma and you figure out.
Isn't that great?
Isn't it great?
heal it? Like possibly you revisit it and have a chance to heal it.
Oh,
too?
I think you 100% heal it. We had a workshop with Rosalind Wiseman, who wrote the source material book, Queen Bees and Wannabes. Maybe before we opened on Broadway, and she had us revisit, real high school trauma, in the sense that the trauma when you're a high schooler is the person who was mean to you, the teacher who said something to you that you never forgot, the time you wore the outfit that got made fun of, which when you're an adult, you just think, oh my God, that's so silly and dumb. But at the time,
That is your world.
everything. It's your world. And it's weird because you have to give it that importance
Yeah.
to figure out why you behave the way you do now. And she said something about, think of that teacher. And I just thought, oh, that's that one moment in like third period English is the reason I do XYZ almost 15 years later. So,
Wow.
which is just
Yeah.
bizarre.
Yeah.
You ask that question, you're like, have you experienced trauma that's encouraged your creativity? And not in the terminology that I think people who have dealt with extreme trauma would define, but just instances that really shift your gears in your head and encourage you or push you or force you to.
Do you have a specific example that you're thinking about right now?
I do. And it's so, and I really think of it because of this workshop with Rosalind, where she's like, what, did you ever have a bully? And I was too much of a nerd to really have like, maybe I had bullies who were my age, but I had choir friends, so I didn't realize it. But I had a teacher bully where I have two older sisters who are incredibly bright and intelligent and just like amazing. They're just so smart and they're such hard workers. And growing up, I was always 4 years behind the eldest and 2 years behind the middle. And then I would show up. And I always had self-control issues in class. Not like I had a math teacher who came to the show and I just said, like, Mr. Kamian, what do you remember about me from math class? And he said, you weren't the greatest student, but you always put off a vibe of, I'm ready to be heard, just ready to participate. He was not this teacher, but truly. And I just thought that's so accurate. But this teacher in high school who just said something along the lines of like, your sisters were never like this. When you're 15 in front of your whole class. And everybody, I was from a relatively smallish town. We all knew.
Yeah. Where was this small town?
This was outside San Francisco, Moraga, California.
Wow.
And that's so, it's,
Wow.
I remember we had to tell these stories to Rosalind, and it was so interesting, the really tiny things that we remember. Now in hindsight, if anybody said that to me now, it just rolls off your back.
Sure.
But when you're that young, I just thought, oh, that was the turning point where I started to behave in a way that was directly related to just a singular comment and how it affected my creativity or sometimes lack thereof. I think, I honestly think lack of creativity.
It kind of shut down certain parts of you
100%.
that were different from your sisters.
100%.
They didn't behave that way.
Baby side tangent. I remember Cammie and I were talking about how I read something, and it may have been like a dialogue between Tina Fey and Rosalind, where she said something about when you go into a school or an institution and you have like a bunch of teenage girls together, if there's one girl who's like, I don't think there is a problem, I don't think that happens in the school, she's the problem.
She is the problem.
She's the queen bee and she's the bully.
100%.
Still to this day, I believe, like in adult culture, I have seen that as well. Like, and I'll be the person, and you're usually the person as well. Like, as truth tellers, we're like, hey, can we talk about like what just happened?
Yes.
There's a little dynamic going on. Oh, no, there's no problem. I don't understand what the problem is. We're like, oh shit,
guess who's
you're the person with
the problem.
100% understand that.
So jumping back.
I know I took us on such a spin there.
No. Oh, we'll go for a ride.
We'll go for a ride.
We will.
We're going to take all the rides.
That wave.
Do you characterize yourself more as an interpretive artist or a creative sort of originating artist or somewhere in between?
I think what's been asked of me, and this is why I love this podcast. What's been asked of me has been interpretive, of being asked to interpret something that's put in front of me, and I think my goal, though, especially as I leave this thing that I was asked to interpret a very well-known piece of material, a movie that we all know, And what does it look like when there's nothing that you are forced to pay homage to? What does it look like when you are the only person in charge of the creativity? And also, just because I'm asked to do it in a job capacity does not mean the other thing has to simmer and die in the corner.
I agree.
That is right.
I mean, we'll get into it more, but something I was curious how you thought of yourself, because I am struck by, yes, you are a very successful interpretive artist. And also I feel like you have this like creative, originating, beating heart and kind of it shows up in your activism. It shows up in your entrepreneurialism. Like I feel like there is more and more, as you live, there's more and more originating creativity that continues to rise up out of you.
Which are
you into it?
I'm into it. I'm into that. You see that because it reinstills the faith in myself when I get away from that, of like, those are always the moments when I'm happiest.
Interesting.
Of when I am creating something that's totally mine.
Yes.
Usually doesn't have to do with a commercial theater product.
Yes.
Right. And I really had to think about that as I enter into this new phase, because I just thought that is what brings me joy. That is what fulfills me. As opposed to, as much as I've loved the jobs I've gotten to have and feel grateful for them, they were almost catapults for that type of creativity.
They become sort of like you get to do a show like Mean Girls. You're right at the center of it. And somebody's like, hey, in addition to all your performative responsibilities, we also gift you with this giant megaphone.
Yes, 100%.
Go for it.
Yes.
Just flip the switch there.
And it's the best. And that is like, that's been a gift that I did not expect, did not anticipate. And I just hope that I can run with it, even when that's not, if the megaphone isn't handed to me, like make your own megaphone.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. You have to. Can you tell us a little bit about what you want to make? Like when you say, this is what makes me the happiest. What is this?
One of the things I've noticed, I've gotten to work with a lot of young high schoolers recently, females. And I've noticed such a difference in the way females walk into a room where they're unsure, at least at that age, like 14 to 18, versus their male counterparts. And it was really interesting to me because I thought I went to go teach for 2 weeks at my alma mater this summer. And I noticed randomly there was one class where we only had 8 girls in the class. And it was like getting to watch one of those like time-lapse videos of flowers unfolding almost, because they would just come in, and I understand the fear, I understand the nervousness, and I wasn't even sure if it was about, I don't even know if it was about men and their proximity. I don't think it was. I think it was more just being given the freedom to be weird and be silly, and
also might have been
and be messy.
It might have been being in close proximity to you and just like settling down too,
and settling
just
down.
a guess,
which is so funny to because I forget. I don't think of myself that way, but I do understand that. I'm like, if I was a young, I remember when I worked with Celia Keenan Bolger for the first time, and I was just like, I don't know how to talk to you. But my biggest hope is to. What I would love to create is, and I hope to create this for myself as well, is more free-flowing pathways for young women to communicate and share their ideas, or just share their individuality. Because I think, I feel like, especially with the onslaught of social media, that there's not a outlet for that, or they're using social media as the creative outlet, and it's not actually creating conversation or dialogue or putting something sustainable into the world. I just think that age range is so interesting, because I feel like if you catch them before they turn 14, 15, 16,
That's
17, like you can really.
There's like so much data on it. I'm sure you're aware of like that, like what happens in those particular years where girls like shift from like having an avid interest in science and math and a freedom of play and creativity, and I'm feeling good about myself, to almost like an almost instant crash into like, I can't be any of those things that I was last year.
Yes.
I need to change myself.
I need to
be different.
Tone it down a notch or whatever.
Tone it down.
That was always my
Change
version
it.
of it, of like, you're at a 10, Erica, bring it to a 6.
That's right. Rein it in.
Rein it in.
Yeah.
Rein
I'm
it in.
interested in this. I, you know, Nanny Cams and Nanny Susan will always be in full support of your
100%
of your creative self-expression and your as an interpretive artist. Yes, we will come and we will clap and cheer for you.
Yes, we will.
And we will clap and cheer for you as a completely originating artist for the things that you want to make and do.
Yeah.
I think that's super exciting.
Yeah.
To that point, I just want to revisit a conversation we were having before we turned on the mics.
Turned on the mic.
So our friend Maida Wagner has done all of this research around 5 creative types, and it is baked into a research survey that each guest on the Spark File that they complete before we roll into the conversation. And you had a response to that. You sort of took a peek at it, and just to
I loved your
just
honesty.
to recap from our fun conversation with Maida Wagner, the 5 creative types are the A-lister, the artisan, the sensitive soul, the game changer, and the activist. And there were 2 types that you were drawn to, but you had there was a little bit of a strugs in your mind around that. Can you talk us through that?
Yes. I read all 5 and I said, well, obviously I'm the A-lister, but I want to be the activist. And I said, can I have a tie? And you said, well, which one are you the most? What's your
driver?
rising?
Yeah.
What's your rising one?
Your rising side.
It's the A-list, which felt icky to say because I think for me, my favorite type of creative people, the things that I'm most inspired to or most inspired by are people who do not seem driven by success, but just ooze original ideas
for art's sake.
Yeah. And yet I've always been a very driven person. I want to do well, which is weird because doing well in the creative realm is subjective. Like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
But I said, well, which can I be both? And I think I am an A-lister who wants to be an activist or who has moments of activism.
And I think that's real.
Yeah.
I think that usually it is I'm not the expert, Maida is, but it's like a combo platter, but you have that driver and it can shift over the course of a lifetime.
Yes.
And we also talked with Maida about like the perfect combinations of either within a person or to combo with a partner.
Yes.
So
a collaborator.
An activist who doesn't have an A-lister working with them, they may not be able to make an impact.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Or an artisan, like oftentimes artisans are like those crafters who maybe
Emily
their
Dickinson,
work never gets
writing
out
thousands of
because
poems and like a small handful are published in their lifetime.
And I think of
but
like
it's not promotional of
that's
her.
right. And I think of like Brooklyn, some artisan crafting some, putting 1,000 hours into some woodworking piece, and it's like, I don't care if it ever gets sold. Like this is I just want it to be right. And unfortunately, if they're not paired with someone who does have an A-list mentality, who's like, dude, I'm going to sell that. I'm going to get that. I'm going to get your work out there. Then they don't, so they're not able to share their work. But in terms of an activist, like you wouldn't be able to have an impact. So it's really exciting that you have this combination.
I think so too. I think it's very
I'm
exciting.
seeking a collaborator.
Or you have
We're
it within
available.
you.
I have it within me.
A, we're available.
Yeah.
But B, you have it
yes,
within
hello,
you.
ladies.
You look at somebody like Bono. He's an A-lister.
A total A-lister.
Activist. He's a total activist.
And has always been that.
Yeah.
Like even in early days, before they were such a worldwide sensation,
right.
was still using his craft.
So you're in good company.
Beyonce.
Beyonce.
A-list activist.
A-list activist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that I do think they feed one another well. I also think I don't know. I feel the responsibility. People have asked me, especially because the show had such a explosion of, acclaim's the wrong word, but interest of, was this something you felt you had to do? Is it something that you cared about or wanted? And I felt lucky that I was handed, like you said,
megaphone.
the megaphone.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I didn't want to squander that opportunity. And I hope that I can continue to do
you
that.
think there's a correlation between like the microphone that you were handed in relation to Mean Girls, and what you described as the work that you want to do? Like,
Yeah.
did that grow
That
together,
exposure.
or was one there before the other?
I think it was always there before, just from work that I had done in college, and I definitely had my collaborators in college.
Yeah.
And I think it gets harder to hold on to those people when you move to New York and you're trying to,
Sure.
Everybody is grinding.
Sure.
Yeah.
everybody's grinding. You
Sure.
lose that person or people. But it was always there. And there was something about the stability of not just the job, but the resources that were available to me, the human beings that I had around me every day. And also, I really just think the source material too of knowing we were reaching, to me, I think one of the most impressionable ages of kids who want to do something but don't know what that is or how to do it. But I think it's always been there. I don't know if it was instilled via parents, via teachers, just way of upbringing, but it has been always for me what I enjoy the most.
That just makes me think like you were really the perfect person to cast in this show because your heart
alignment.
Your heart was aligned with the show.
To unpack that a little bit, we're so interested in the creative ways, you've alluded to them slightly, but the creative ways that you have rocked your social activism before and having this platform. Can you tell us a bit about what issues are important to you and what kinds of things you've created in response to those issues?
One of my favorite things that just grew out of the show was during election season. When I was in college, it was the first time I was able to vote, but I was a California kid in Michigan. The process of learning how to vote to me seemed abnormally difficult.
Just daunting.
Daunting. And I just thought, I'm an intelligent person who has parents who are communicative, who has a driver's license, who has all the things you need, and I'm still finding this difficult to figure out. So if that's where I'm at, how is any student who's dealing with trying to get their financial aid through, who doesn't have a driver's license, who is maybe
busy as
fuck, how are these kids ever going to know what to do? So that was one of my favorite things with the show of just, which sounds so silly, but I just thought like, if I can create excitement about voting and tie
It's not silly. It's
so not silly.
That's not the silly part of saying I will be out at the stage door every single night to register you, or I will.
Oh my God, no! It's not.
Wow.
It's grassroots. It's so relevant.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Which was so, and that's just the gift of like people came. I went knocking on doors with Swing Left, and I was working with Timothy Hughes, who is in Hadestown. We were partners. I thought, this is so much harder having to go to the people. Yeah. This is really difficult. I had the privilege of having a ton of people come to see me. They already think they know me because I played this welcoming,
They're
warm
interested
character.
in connecting with you.
They want to connect.
Yeah.
And I, who knows how many of those kids, even if they were registered, went out to actually vote the day of. But I just thought, well, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
That's
and it's
right.
what I'm
when you were
capable
knocking on
of.
those doors.
Oh my God.
For Swing Left, were you like, knock, knock, knock? Do you like Mean Girls?
Do you have any teenagers in the house? And we were such a funny twosome because Tim Hughes is almost like 8 feet tall.
I was going to say,
then it's me.
Oh my God.
But it was a good good pair. Good
but
pairing.
I got to imagine that then the connections that people had with you at the stage door, like you also found a way to make those connections way more meaningful.
100%.
That's cool.
Which
That
I
is
thought
cool.
for me, that was the most, I'm just bummed that I won't be in the show for this upcoming election. And I've been trying to figure out.
Still
Could
be
you
at the
swing
stage
in?
door.
I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to ask, can I go on not even on the road in the show, but can I join the tour as they're traveling during election season?
Oh my gosh.
Just because I think
That is
that's
a great idea.
I know. We're talking to them. And this is the difficult thing where like commercial theater or just commercial products can't always exercise their any sort of political
Take a stand
activism.
on
Exactly.
anything.
And that was the thing. It was I had no backing from the show for this because they couldn't.
Right. I
do
understand that. But we were talking with Donna Lieberman from the NYCLU recently, and we were talking about what you're supporting by, for instance, getting people registered to vote is a neutral principle.
It's very neutral.
Yeah.
And the most important first step,
Yes. Right.
I think. And that was sort of the
I was so
the
taken
impetus.
by that, the fight for neutral principles. I was like, I really...
Neutral principles.
I feel like I feel like I'm always playing catch up when it comes to so many subject matters. But when she was talking about that, I was just like, make out with me, Donna Lieberman. Neutral principles.
Right now, that's really interesting. That's a whole like subset now of activism of like, how do we get people to fight for something we can all agree on?
Right. And can we not
Neutral principles.
right? Freedom of speech, these things that like
access to
we're in a place
education.
now where like, well, I believe in it when that person agrees with me.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I don't believe in it when it's someone else.
Yeah. So you're rocking like voting. Are there other issues that you're passionate about?
Do you mean in the future that I'm interested in, or in the context of the show that we're successful?
The future is great.
You
or.
choose. This is about you, baby.
Well, I've always been, and this is also because of my middle sister worked for a nonprofit, really interested in improving literacy rates throughout the world, but unfortunately, literacy rates in the U.S. alone are much lower than they used to be. Because for me, books are just like the greatest thing ever invented. I feel so lucky that I liked stories because it's what I've made my career in.
Yeah.
And I just think if you have difficulty reading, you never get to explore that. If you don't have access to reading, you don't get to explore that.
Yep.
So that was sort of how I got involved during this show, at least, just because there was a tie-in of Africa, the African Library Project, which sends books to children's schools. We chose Kenya because Katie's from Kenya. And that was, to me, that was the simplest, most enjoyable like stretch of time that I ever had at that show.
I love that because I was just looking at your social media feed and I was like, good damn, Erika's working so hard it's making me tired. like collecting books and like beating like the drum to get more books to get.
It was so much fun.
And
it
then
was
you
so
shipped the books.
much fun.
Like you really ran a campaign.
It was my favorite. I think it is truly, and I thought about this because I kind of went through almost like a postpartum when it was over because I was doing the show and I was like, oh, I'm not very happy doing the show right now. What's going on? And my boyfriend said, he's like, well, I think you don't go to the show knowing that you're going to get books at the door anymore when you're done with it. He was like, you had built in
the activism piece.
This system.
You were killing it with the A-lister piece as the star of a Broadway musical.
Yeah. That's
you
right.
were missing the activist piece.
Yeah. And I really do miss it. And I thought it was so much fun. I want to go. The library has been built. The books have been shipped to Migori, Kenya. And I have a secret dream of like really saying goodbye to Katie in Kenya and like going to see it and getting to meet the students.
Amazing.
But I loved doing that. And I feel like it was also a neutral, what is the phrase again?
Neutral principles.
Neutral principle. And I think I'm just seeking out my next. I think voter registration for me just feels like the most sensical. And I feel like I fortunately have access to that demographic who is about to register or
You do.
should have registered by
You
now.
do.
So that really feels like what I want to continue to
That's
focus on.
exciting.
Love it.
yeah.
I love it.
And I understand, like, in addition to being a performer, you're a teacher, correct?
I love teaching.
Oh, can you tell us about that?
I mean, that is my true goal is to like create just an all female type of arts camp program. Well, we met via the Performing Arts Project.
That's right. This summer, Cam's and I, were you down there this past summer?
I wasn't
Because you were busy doing your fancy Broadway show.
Yeah.
Cam's and I went down there and we had an amazing time. We ended up
Love
recording the theme song to this podcast with a student.
students.
That's all.
That's students?
And the
Gavin
sounds you hear
Creel.
on the theme song, they were all recorded at the Performing Arts
That's
Project.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Of
It was
course they were.
incredible. And we did a live episode there and we interviewed Gavin Creel live for
my gosh.
For another
Those are-
episode.
yeah.
It was
Talk
so
about
much fun.
He's my inspo.
Yeah,
Oh my
and
God.
we ran some great Sparkfile workshops all about like how do you make something where nothing existed before.
Where nothing was there.
Yeah,
That's right.
That doesn't surprise me. TPAP is magical.
T-Pep is
really
magic.
is.
But you were saying, so you were down at the Performing Arts Project.
Yes. And I just thought if I can create, and I don't know, I wonder if it's possible because in the summer, somewhere that's not, a lot of those kids are traveling, they feel free from the like high school hierarchy that binds them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought if I can take that and put it into some of the high schools here in New York, that would be amazing. We did a lot of workshops with Young Women's Leadership public school system, which is they have 3 schools, I think, and the way the girls were supportive of one another and communicated with one another and collaborated was unlike anything that I had
Wow.
experienced at a co-ed school. And this is not to bash their male counterparts at all. I don't know what it is, but I do think when just females are alone together creating something, the worry of being silly or supportive or weird just goes away.
Oh my God, I feel like I could talk about this for like 10 hours. I've like always been
You were
fascinated
just
with
talking about this.
Yes, I'm telling you. Yeah, I talk about all the time. But like it has always fascinated me that at a certain age, girls like stop doing anything. And when they get together, they're just talking about boys
Yes.
and what everyone thinks of them and who's the most popular and what boys like them. Boys at that same age, when they get together, they're doing shit. They're like outside playing games, or maybe now they're inside playing video games. They're doing things.
But doing something.
And I'm like, girls, how do we get you to keep doing
How do we get back to
things?
that? We did like shows in the backyard and
Right.
summer camps that we threw with my sisters. And that's the thing. I was like, I was the most creative, I think, when I was 12 years old.
That's right. That's right. But the mental energy now that starts going into their Instagram feed
Yes.
or,
that's
I
a
just
whole different
can't.
variable that we
didn't have it. We didn't have it.
The Grams didn't
Thank
have.
God.
Grammy Cams and Grammy Susan.
Oh my gosh, I wish I could go
I
back
just
to
am
that.
so excited that you're doing this work because it's so needed.
Yes.
They need you.
I hope so. I
Oh
hope
my
they're not going to be like, ugh, we don't
No, they need
Enough
you.
of you.
What is it? So you have a sort of a spark of inspiration for an all female, whether it's sort of some sort of arts summer camp experience, something like that.
Yes.
What are you loving teaching right now? I know you have the heart of a teacher. What are you loving sharing right now?
I think a big thing for me, especially teaching these kids, was I realized we don't really talk about the mess ups and the messiness in general.
Yes.
You even go on to like, I was curious because I had to teach a class where the kids had to do research about me before. And they all asked these questions of like, when you made your New York debut at this age. And I said, how do you know that? And they said, well, we looked you up on Wikipedia. I went to Wikipedia and I just thought, this is my highlight reel. And it's the first thing that pops up.
Yep.
And people and students have no idea of the failure and the screw ups and the wrong turns that happened in not just my professional life, but personal life. They have no idea. And I just thought, if I can create an environment where we can do that, or even a platform where I thought this when we were doing press for Mean Girls, nobody talks to actors when they're at their low points. We talk to them on the press junket. We talk to them when they're being interviewed after winning an award.
So true.
We don't talk to them when
I feel like it's one of my failings. It's why I'm not an A-lister, is because I never care. God, I shouldn't say this out loud on a mic, but I never care about the promotion of things, or that I'm just sort of like, let's talk about the yummy inner center. Like, I am so, if you have something to promote, I'm like, sure, we could talk about it, but I'm always just like, let's talk about the art.
About what's going on inside.
There.
Yeah.
And that is what is fascinating to me. And that's what sticks around. I mean,
but even what you're saying though, even if there are interesting things going on inside of you at your low point, no one's talking to you about that.
Nobody's talking to
if
you
you don't
about it.
have something to promote,
we want to talk
no
to you
one
about
is
that.
asking you how you're feeling or what's happening.
Exactly.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I wanna make or how I wanna be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
That was part 1 of our interview with Erika Henningsen.
Part 2 will be available next week, unless it's the future. Then it's available now.
So go on, give it a listen and find out what's sparking Erika these days.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the chief creative officer and chief marketing officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.